The wind swept across the prairie like a whisper from the past, carrying dust, memory, and the low hum of a coming storm. The wedding had ended hours ago, if one could call it that. A handful of people, a preacher who spoke faster than his heart allowed, and two strangers standing beneath a sky too big for words. He was the rancher everyone in the territory knew, Cole Tanner, a man of few words and too many scars. She was the woman nobody knew, brought by stagecoach from the east, veiled, quiet, clutching a single suitcase and the faint smell of lavender. They called her Clara. The journey to his ranch was silent. The wheels of the wagon creaked as the horses trotted over the dry earth. Cole stole a glance at her once or twice, trying to read what hid behind her calm face. She sat straight, hands clasped tightly on her lap, the golden light of the sunset catching the edges of her hair. He'd been told she was fragile, too gentle for this land, but there was something in her eyes, a strength that didn't match the tremor in her voice when she said yes earlier that day. When they reached the ranch, the sky had turned a deep crimson. Cole stepped down first, then offered his hand. She hesitated before taking it, her fingers soft, trembling slightly. "It's heavier than I thought," she murmured, glancing at the large wooden chest he'd brought down from the wagon. Cole smiled faintly, misunderstanding at first. "It's full of tools and books. Things you'll get used to out here," he said. But she didn't mean the chest. Not really. She was talking about something else entirely, something deeper. Inside, the fire crackled in the old stone hearth. The ranch house smelled of pine and smoke, simple but clean. He pulled out a chair for her. "You should rest. It's a long way from wherever you came." She nodded, her gaze drifting toward the window, where the wide plain stretched into nothingness. "I've never been anywhere so empty," she said softly. "It's not empty," Cole replied. "You just have to wait till it starts talking back." There was silence again, the kind that presses against your chest. Cole poured 2 cups of coffee, though she didn't touch hers. She looked at him, really looked, for the first time. The firelight flickered against his face, revealing the weary lines etched by years of work and solitude. "You don't say much," she whispered. "Not much to say," he answered. "Words don't fix fences or feed cattle." But he smiled, a small thing, awkward and almost shy. She rose from her seat, moving toward the heavy wooden beam that held up the roof. Her fingers brushed against it, tracing the grooves. "You built this house yourself?" He nodded. "Every board, every nail. Took me 5 years." She turned, meeting his eyes again. "Then it's strong," she said. He hesitated, unsure what she meant, until she added quietly, "That's good. I don't think I could live in something that falls apart easy." It was then that she reached for her suitcase and tried to lift it. It didn't budge. She tried again, her small frame straining against the weight. "It's too heavy," she whispered, and her voice cracked with something that wasn't about luggage anymore. Cole froze, watching her struggle, realizing she was carrying more than he could see. He stepped forward, gently taking the case from her hands. "You don't have to lift it alone," he said, setting it down beside the bed. Her eyes met his, glassy, uncertain, full of questions she couldn't ask. And in that brief moment, the room seemed to shrink. The fire, the wind outside, the distant coyote cry, all vanished. Just her and him. 2 strangers bound by law, by need, and perhaps by something neither of them yet understood. She turned away quickly, pressing a hand to her chest. "I'm not used to someone helping," she murmured. "You'll have to get used to it," he said softly. The storm finally broke outside, thunder rolling over the plains. Cole added another log to the fire, then stood by the door, unsure if he should stay or give her space. She sat by the window, staring into the rain, lost in thoughts that seemed too heavy for the present. "You can rest easy here," he said finally. "No one will hurt you on this land." She didn't look at him, just whispered, "I've heard that before." And for the first time, Cole Tanner, the man who had broken wild horses and buried his own ghosts without shedding a tear, felt something cold in his chest. He didn't know what her past held, but one thing was certain. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one she had brought with her. The rain didn't stop through the night. It drummed against the roof in slow, steady waves, whispering through the cracks of the old ranch house. Cole barely slept. Every time the thunder rolled, he could hear her restless footsteps on the floorboards. Sometimes she stopped by the window, other times near the fire. He didn't ask why, not yet. He'd learned that some things unravel on their own, and trying to force them only tightens the knot. When morning finally broke, the storm had left a soft fog over the valley. Cole stepped outside, boots sinking in the damp soil, breathing in the scent of rain-soaked earth. It was the kind of morning he usually liked. Quiet, fresh, clean, but now the silence felt different. He could feel her presence behind him even without turning around. "You don't sleep much," she said quietly. He smiled without looking. "Neither do you." She stepped onto the porch, her hands wrapped around a shawl. The pale light touched her face, softening the sadness there. "I didn't think the rain would be so loud out here," she said. "You get used to it," he replied. "Out here, even silence has a sound." She looked at him, as if trying to decide whether he was a kind man, or just another man who said kind things. That he handed her a cup of coffee, black and steaming. She held it close, staring at the horizon. "I used to think coffee smelled like home," she murmured, "until I didn't have one anymore." Cole didn't ask what had happened, but she continued anyway, as though the fog itself loosened her tongue. "I came from the city. My father promised me to a man who had money and no heart. When I ran, he said no one would ever take me. He was almost right." Cole stayed silent. He knew what it meant to run, to lose everything you thought you were. The wind rustled through the grass, carrying the cry of a distant hawk. "You don't owe me anything," he said finally. "I didn't buy you to own you." Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp and searching. "Then why did you?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because I saw your eyes in that photograph. You looked like someone who still had fight left in them." The words hung between them, heavy as the damp air. Clara looked down, her hands trembling slightly. "Fight doesn't always save you," she whispered. "Sometimes it just leaves scars." She turned and walked back inside, leaving him alone on the porch with nothing but the sound of wind brushing against the prairie grass. Hours later, while fixing a fence near the barn, Cole heard the old wooden door creak open. She stood there, holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "This was in my case," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She walked toward him, unwrapping it slowly. Inside was a worn photograph, a young woman with her hair braided, smiling beside an older man and a little boy. The edges were burned, the image faded by smoke. Cole looked up at her, eyes narrowing. "Your family?" She nodded, tears glistening. "The man who was supposed to marry me. He set fire to the house when I refused him. My brother didn't make it out." Her voice cracked. "That's what the weight was, Cole. That suitcase isn't full of clothes. It's full of ashes, the ashes from what's left of my home." Cole froze. The wind stilled, and for a long time he couldn't find a single word. He finally stepped closer, taking the burned photograph in his hands. You carried that all the way here? He asked quietly. She nodded, unable to speak. He looked at her, really looked, and realized that everything about her made sense now. The fear, the silence, the way her eyes searched for safety and didn't believe it when she found it. Without saying another word, he took the photograph and placed it carefully in the pocket of his coat. Then you don't have to carry it alone anymore, he said. His voice wasn't soft, but steady, the kind of voice that built fences, tamed horses, and buried heartbreak without breaking. For a moment, Clara just stood there, staring at him as if he had said something she didn't know how to process. Then she turned, her face crumpling in quiet tears. Cole didn't move. He let her cry, knowing the rain outside had only washed the land, not her pain. That night, when the stars came out again, the air smelled like renewal. The storm had passed, but something had shifted between them. Not love yet, not even trust, but something raw and real, like a seed beneath the dirt. She stood by the porch railing, eyes on the endless sky. Do you think the land ever forgets the fire? She asked. Cole leaned against the post, glancing at her. No, he said softly. It just grows around it. For the first time since she arrived, Clara smiled. It was faint, uncertain, but it was a beginning, and that out in the vast silence of the west was more than enough.
Weeks passed, and the rhythm of the ranch became their language. Clara rose before dawn, tending the chickens, sweeping the porch, and cooking breakfast while the first light spilled over the horizon. Cole worked the fields from sunrise to sunset, his figure a steady silhouette against the blazing sky. Little by little, their silences began to change. They were no longer filled with unease, but with quiet understanding, the kind that grows between two people who don't need to explain their wounds to recognize them. Sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, Clara would watch the way he moved, slow, deliberate, never in a rush, as if he'd learned that the land only listened to those who respected its pace. And sometimes, when he passed her near the barn, she'd catch the faintest trace of a smile in his eyes. He didn't need to say anything. That smile was a promise that she was safe here, even if she didn't yet believe it. But peace in the west was a fragile thing. It rarely lasted long before the dust rose again. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and turned the sky copper, a lone rider appeared on the trail. Cole saw him first. Tall, dark coat, hat pulled low, a horse too fine for a drifter. The man stopped at the gate and called out, I'm looking for someone named Clara. Her name cracked through the quiet like gunfire. She stepped out of the house, her breath catching when she saw him. Her face went pale. Eli, she whispered. Cole's jaw tightened. The stranger dismounted slowly, his boots crunching against the dry earth. You didn't think you could hide out here forever, did you? His tone was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that hides cruelty underneath. Cole moved to stand beside her, one hand resting near the revolver at his hip. You're not welcome here, he said evenly. Eli smirked, his eyes cold. This ain't about you, rancher. It's about what she owes me. Clara shook her head. I owe you nothing, she said, her voice trembling but clear. You burned everything I had. Eli stepped closer, and Cole's hand moved instinctively to his weapon. Now hold on, Eli said, raising a hand mockingly. No need for trouble. Just came to collect what's mine. Cole's eyes hardened. She's not yours. And if you ride off now, you'll keep your life intact. The silence that followed was sharp as a knife. The wind had stopped. Even the horses seemed to hold their breath. Eli's grin faded, replaced by a sneer. You're a fool, Tanner. You think you can keep what's already broken? His hand twitched toward his gun. Cole didn't hesitate. The sound of the shot rolled across the plains, echoing for miles. When the dust settled, Eli's body lay still near the gate. The revolver slipped from his hand, useless now against a man who'd had nothing left to lose. Clara stood frozen, staring at the lifeless figure of her past. The tears didn't come right away, only silence. Cole holstered his weapon, breathing hard, the smell of gunpowder mixing with the dry scent of earth. It's over, he said quietly, but she didn't move. It'll never be over, she whispered. Not for what he did. Not for what I lost. He stepped closer, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. Maybe not, he said, but you can start living again. She turned toward him then, her eyes full of pain and something else. Relief, maybe, or the fragile beginning of forgiveness. That night, they buried Eli at the far edge of the property, beneath a patch of wild grass where no one would ever think to look. The stars above were clear and endless. Clara watched as Cole covered the last mound of earth. Do you regret it? She asked softly. No, he said. Out here, you protect what's worth keeping. In the days that followed, the ranch began to heal with him. The rain returned, gentle this time, soaking into the dry soil, and for the first time since her arrival, Clara laughed, a quiet sound, but real. She started planting flowers near the porch, saying the place needed color. Cole pretended not to care. But he found himself watching her more often, realizing the house finally felt alive again. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Clara walked out with something wrapped in cloth. She handed it to Cole. "The ashes," she said. "You can scatter them here. It's time." He took them silently, then walked with her to the ridge overlooking the valley. Together, they opened the bundle, and the wind carried the ashes into the fading light. For a long moment neither spoke. Then she whispered, "It's lighter now." Cole turned to her, his eyes soft. "What is?" "The weight," she said. "The one I brought with me." He nodded, tipping his hat low. "Good. Then maybe now you can stay." She smiled, a real one this time, small but steady. "I think I already have." The wind blew gentle over the plains, rustling the grass and whispering through the rafters of the old ranch house. Somewhere, a new life was beginning, quiet, stubborn, and unafraid. And for the first time in years, Cole Tanner felt the land breathe again. Because sometimes, the heaviest things aren't meant to be carried alone. They're meant to be shared, until the weight becomes light enough to let go.